Hello dear students, welcome to the next part of the module of our history chapter, and the name of our module is the national movement. So let's begin. So the name of the module is the making of the national movement, and the name of the sub-modules that we will be doing in this chapter are the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre, Khilafat Agitation and Non-Corporation Movement, People's Initiatives, the People's Mahatma, the happenings of 1922 to 1929, Dandi, March to the Dandi, Quit India movement, and later towards independence and partition. So what is the Jallianwala Bagh massacre? As we have said in the previous module that General Dyer, he ruthlessly executed many people who were organizing a hartal on the Baishakhi day of the year. So what happened on April 13th, 1919, on the day of Baishakhi, people gathered at Jallianwala Bagh for celebration and for public meeting. General Dyer, a British officer, entered Jallianwala Bagh, locked all the entries and ordered his troops to start firing at the crowd. Thousands of people were killed, and the country was shocked by this incident. All the national leaders protested strongly against this cruel act. So this is one of the most heinous and one of the most ruthless repression of a hartal that the British East India Company had ever done in India. Now, what is the Khilafat agitation and the non-cooperation movement? In 1920, the British imposed a horse treaty on the Turkish Sultan or Khalifa, and he was deprived of his political powers and authority. The Khilafat movement was launched by Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, and they wished to initiate a full-fledged non-cooperation movement against the British under the leadership of Gandhiji and demanded Swaraj. In 1921 to 1922, the non-cooperation movement gained momentum. Thousands of students, what happened? They not only did the freedom fighters fought against the British rule, now thousands of students, they left government school and colleges. Many lawyers like Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das, C. Rajagopalachari, and Asif Ali gave up their practices. British time to spare surrendered and legislature is boycotted. So, what happened? Everybody surrendered, and all the members of the Indian National Congress, like Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das, they gave up their practices. And what happened? The British legislature, all those who were the part of this legislature is boycotted. People lit public bonfires of foreign cloth. So what happened? People lit publicly, they burned down all the foreign cloth. Now, people's initiatives. In Kheda, Gujarat, Patidar, peasants organized non-violent campaigns against the higher revenue demand of the British. In coastal Andhra and interior Tamil Nadu, liquor shops were picketed. In Bengal, the Khilafat and Non-Cooperation Alliance gave enormous communal unity and strength to the national movement. In Punjab, the Akali agitation of the Sikhs sought to remove the corrupt Mahants who were supported by the British from their Gurudwaras. So what happened? The people in Kheda, Gujarat, Patidar, and not only the rich people but also the peasants, they organized non-violent campaigns against the higher revenue demand of the British. In coastal Andhra and the interior Tamil Nadu, liquor shops, they were all picketed. And what happened in Bengal, the Khilafat and Non-Cooperation Alliance gave enormous communal unity. So for the first time, due to the British rule, we can say that the Hindus and the Muslims, they were united together to fight against this foreign power. So in Punjab, what happened? The Akali agitation of the Sikhs sought to remove the corrupted Mahants who were supported by the British from their Gurudwaras. And now we will study about the people's Mahatma. That is Mahatma Gandhi, who was considered to be as a people's person. People thought of Gandhiji as a symbol of kindness, as someone who could help them to overcome their misery and poverty. Gandhiji wished to build class unity, not class conflict. So, what did Gandhiji want to build? He desired to build a class that is a society that will be free of class, or if there is a class, there should be unity and not class conflict. Everybody imagined that he could help them in their fight against zamindars and agricultural laborers and believed that he would provide them land. Now, some of the most important events happened between 1922 to 1929. In February 1922, a crowd of peasants set fire to a police station in Chauri Chaura. Gandhiji was against violence, and that's why he called off the non-cooperation movement. Immediately, Chittaranjan Das and Motilal Nehru, what did they do? They argued that the party should fight elections to the council and entered them in order to influence the government policies. Now, civil disobedience movement was launched in 1930. Because of this, so that under the leadership of Gandhiji, the formation of the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, that is as we know today as the RSS. This was built in around 1930. So this is another very important incident or event in history that happened between the 1922 to 1929. The Congress resolved to fight for Purna Swaraj. Now, what is Purna Swaraj? Absolute independence from the British rule. In 1929, under the presidency of whom? Jawaharlal Nehru, and 26 January 1930 was consequently observed as Independence Day all over the country. Now, the march to Dandi. In 1930, Gandhiji started the march to break the salt law. According to this law, the state had a monopoly on the manufacture and sale of salt. Gandhiji and his followers marched from Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad to the coastal town of Dandi in Surat, where they broke the salt law by gathering natural salt from the sea found on the seashore and boiling seawater to produce salt. The combined struggles of the Indian people bore fruit with the Government of India Act. So this much effort finally started showing results with the Government of India Act when it was made in 1935, which prescribed provincial autonomy, and the government announced elections to the provincial legislature in 1937. So the Second World War broke out again in September 1939. The Congress leaders were ready to support the British war effort, but in return they wanted that India be granted independence after the war. The British refused to concede the demand and the Congress ministers resigned in protest. So this much is the importance of the Dandi March. Now started after this incident, everybody now started the final movement, that is the Quit India movement. Mahatma Gandhi decided to initiate a new phase of movement against the British in the middle of the Second World War, which was Quit India movement. The first response of the British was severe repression, and end of 1943, 90,000 people were arrested and around 1,000 were killed in police firing. So as we can understand, the British were not at all ready to give off their control from Indian kingdoms or India without severe protest or without killing and arresting people. Now finally, to how India got its independence. In 1940, the Muslim League had moved a resolution demanding an independent states for Muslim in the northwestern and eastern areas of the country. The provincial elections of 1937 seemed to have convinced the League that Muslims were a minority. So as we can see, gradually communal problems were arising in India just before independence. So what happened? The Congress's rejection of the League's desire to form a joint Congress League government in the United Provinces in 19. So the Congress's rejection of the League's desire to form a joint Congress League government in the United Provinces in 1937 also annoyed the League, that is the Muslim League, headed by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. In 1945, after the end of the World War, that is the Second World War, the British opened the negotiations between the Congress, the League and themselves, that is the Muslim League and themselves, for the independence of India. The talks failed because the League accelerated the demand for Pakistan. That means the Muslim League, they totally wanted the partition of Pakistan. They wanted to build a separate Muslim country. In March 1946, the British cabinet sent a 3-member mission to Delhi to examine this demand. 16th August 1946 was declared as the Direct Action Day by the League. On 3rd June 1947, ultimately the partition plan was announced in Pakistan, came into existence. The joy of our country's independence from British rule came mixed with the pain of violence and partition. So one thing that students need to remember, that the partition of India, although was a thing to celebrate, but it came with the bloodshed and the immense amount of communal riots that the British had plagued upon us. So इंडिया को फ्रीडम तो मिल गया, इंडिपेंडेंस तो मिल गया, लेकिन उसके साथ ही ब्रिटिश लोग जाने से पहले इंडिया में हिंदू और मुस्लिम का भेदाभेद करके चले गए. During this partition, what happened? Millions and millions of people who wanted to shift to Pakistan were transported from India to Pakistan. जब जो पाकिस्तान में जो हिंदूज थे वो इंडिया वापस लौट लेने लगे. So इस टाइम में बहुत सारा कम्युनल राइट्स हुआ और बहुत इनोसेंट लोगों मारे गए, बहुत इनोसेंट मुस्लिम्स मारे गए हिंदू द्वारा, और बहुत सारे हिंदूज को भी मुस्लिम्स ने मार दिया because of that communal right, that spark that the British government had bestowed upon us, because they believed divide and rule. So with the division of India, the partition of Bengal, everything, all the Hindu and the Muslims who were staying in the country for decades during the medieval period, for hundreds and thousands of years, the British people, they started a division among them, and they sparked the coalition between India and Pakistan, which still lasts today. So इस चैप्टर में हमको क्या मिला? दांडी मार्च और 1922 से 1929 के बीच में क्या क्या इंपॉर्टेंट चीज हुआ. गांधी जी ने एक नॉन कोऑपरेशन मूवमेंट शुरू किया था, जो कि उन्होंने बंद करवा दिया क्योंकि चौरी चौरा विलेज में कुछ पीजेंट्स एक पुलिस स्टेशन को फायर जला दिया था. और गांधी जी वायलेंस के खिलाफ थे, इसीलिए उन्होंने नॉन कॉपरेशन मूवमेंट बंद कर दिया। चित्तरंजन दास और मोतीलाल नेहरू, उन्होंने क्या डिसाइड किया कि पार्टी को इलेक्शंस फाइट करना चाहिए ताकि गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसीज को वो और भी ज्यादा इन्फ्लुएंस कर पाए। और इसी वजह से सिविल डिसोबीडियंस मूवमेंट स्टार्ट हुआ 1930 में, किसके लीडरशिप में? गांधी जी के। और क्या क्या इंपॉर्टेंट चीज हुआ? राष्ट्रीय स्वयं सेवक संघ, दैट इज आरएसएस, और कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी, ये दो इंपॉर्टेंट डेवलपमेंट्स हुए 1920 में। और कांग्रेस ने क्या किया? कांग्रेस ने डिसाइड किया कि वो पूर्ण स्वराज के लिए लड़ना अब स्टार्ट करेंगे 1929 में, अंडर हुज प्रेसिडेंटशिप? जवाहरलाल नेहरू। और 26 जनवरी 1930 को हम सब क्या करते हैं? इंडिपेंडेंस डे वो लोग सेलिब्रेट किए थे पूरे कंट्री में। So this is how the national movement of India began. Now the people's Mahatma. अब गांधी जी को हम कैसे जानते हैं? वो एक काइंडनेस का प्रतीक थे। सब सोचते थे कि यही एक जन है जो उनको उनका गरीबी और उनके दुख से मुक्त कर सकते हैं। और गांधी जी क्या चाहते थे? वो लोग क्लास डिविजन, मतलब क्लास समाज में यूनिटी लाना चाहते थे, कोई क्लास में झगड़ा नहीं चाहते थे। और सब लोग क्या इमेजिन करते थे कि वो उनके लिए लड़के उनको लैंड प्रोवाइड कर पाएंगे। कौन कौन सोचते थे? जमींदार भी सोचते थे और एग्रीकल्चरल लेबर्स भी सोचते थे। सो यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड कि समाज का हर एक लोग उनको रिस्पेक्ट करते थे। सो दिस इज हाउ द ग्रेट Indian national movement came to an end and India got freedom, but at the cost of communalism and partition of the country. Thank you.